Ladies and gentlemen, good day and welcome to Neuland Laboratories Limited Q4 FY21 earnings conference call. As a reminder, all participant lines will be in the listen-only mode, and there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions after the presentation concludes. Should you need assistance during the conference call, please signal an operator by pressing star, then 0 on your touchtone phone. Please note that this conference is being recorded. I now hand the conference over to Mr. Ravi Udeshi from Christensen IR. Thank you, and over to you, sir.
Thank you, Steve. Good evening, friends, and good morning to those who are joining us from the western part of the world. Welcome to the Q4 and FY21 earnings call of Neuland Laboratories Limited. To take us through the results and answer your questions today, we have with us the top management from Neuland, represented by Mr. Sucheth Davuluri, Vice Chairman and CEO, Mr. Saharsh Davuluri, Vice Chairman and Managing Director, Mr. Deepak Gupta, CFO, and Mr. Sajeev Emmanuel Medikonda, Head Corporate Planning and Strategy. We have sent out the press release as well as the detailed presentation, and the same have been uploaded on the website as well as the exchanges. You could take a look at that, or in case any one of you wants it, we could email the same to you. Before we start, I would like to remind you that everything that is being said in this call, which reflects any outlook for the future or which can be construed as a forward-looking statement, must be viewed in conjunction to the risks and uncertainties that we face. These risks and uncertainties are included but not limited to what we have mentioned in the prospectus and in the subsequent annual reports, which you will find on the website. With that said, I will now hand over the floor to Mr. Saharsh, who will give the highlights of the quarter and the year gone past. Over to you, Mr. Saharsh.
Thanks, Ravi. Good evening, friends. Thank you for joining the call. But before I start, I hope all of you are healthy and safe, staying at home. So I think in terms of my opening remarks, I'd like to start off by saying that, in line with the previous quarters, I'll share a few comments about the overall financial results as well as the drivers of the business, and then we'll open up the floor for Q&A. So I trust that you've gone through the presentation that Ravi was referring to. It was posted earlier today on our website, and I believe it's also been filed with the exchanges. As always, we would welcome any feedback on the material shared, and we would try our best to incorporate them going forward. Our operations this quarter were at near normal levels. However, raw material sourcing faced logistical issues in the last couple of weeks of March on account of the lockdown, again being enforced in several states and the related flight cancellations, etc. On the workplace safety and employee health front, we have been taking the required preventive measures both at the office as well as at our facilities, and that has seen us managing well given the current environment. On the financial front, we recorded sales of rupees 259 crores, which was a growth of more than a third compared to the corresponding quarter of the last year. The same was led by high growth in GDS and complemented by a stable growth in the CMS business. On a full year basis, the overall top line grew by almost a fourth to 953 crores, with traction witnessed in both CMS and GDS. Our GDS business continues to see increasing volumes. This was led by the key molecules of levetiracetam, mirtazapine, and levetolol. Specialty had a diversified success base, with some of the important molecules being dorzolamide, diflucerov, entacapone, and donepezil. Going forward, we expect the GDS business to have increasing momentum both in the short term as well as the long term. The CMS business has seen growth both from the baseline as well as the development projects, which have performed in line with our expectations. In the immediate term, we are focusing on some key CMS projects which are approaching commercialization, and in the long term, we continue to focus on CMS business origination across key geographies, which is mostly North America, Europe, and Japan. We would also like to highlight that the CMS business may look lumpy on a quarterly basis due to either seasonality or lumpiness in the orders that we receive, but is expected to deliver growth on a yearly basis. Unit 3 operations have gradually been commercialized on a product-wise basis, and we expect it to show good growth over the next 3 years. With that, I'd now request Deepak to take us through the financials and brief. Deepak?
Yeah. Thanks, Harsh. Good evening, friends, and very warm welcome to everyone for our Q4 FY21 earnings call. I will briefly update you on the financials, after which we will open this call for Q&A session. The total income for this quarter was rupees 259.3 crores, which is a growth of roughly around 34% on year-to-year basis and 5.6% on quarter-to-quarter basis. The EBITDA for this quarter has gone up to 40 crores. This equates to EBITDA margins of 15.4%, which is a decrease of 100 basis points over the previous year's quarter and 360 basis points on a sequential quarter basis. This was due to impact of rupees 8 crores on account of NGT, National Green Tribunal order for environmental restoration, and one-time settlement charge that we have taken for the Income Tax Department prior year's disputed income tax liabilities for 9.5 crores. Both the said liabilities are one-off in nature, and they were earlier declared in our annual reports as continuing liabilities, and now they have been crystallized and we have taken a payment charge for this. Some portion of the EBITDA was also impacted mainly due to the COVID-induced logistics issues in the raw material sourcing. Profit after tax was recorded at 17.2 crores as compared to the loss arising in the previous year quarter, and 26.7 crores in the immediately preceding quarter due to the reasons as stated above. This quarter's EPS is at 13.43 rupees, and the cash and cash equivalent as on the date of the balance sheet stood at 1.1 crores. For FY 2021, our total income was 953 crores, which is up by 24% as compared to the previous year due to the increase in the commercial operations. The EBITDA for the year is 162.5 crores, which is higher by 54%, which is mainly because of the improvement in the business mix that we have seen. The EBITDA margin stood at 17.1% for FY21, being higher by 340 basis points for the same period for the reasons stated above. The PAT came to 80.3 crore rupees. And our gross margin is at 170 crores, and our gearing ratios continue to decrease on a year-to-year basis. We have also undertaken capex of around 105 crores for FY21. With this, I now request the moderator to please open the line for Q&A session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We will now begin the question and answer session. Anyone who wishes to ask a question may press star and 1 on their touchtone telephone. If you wish to remove yourself from the question queue, you may press star and 2. Participants are requested to use handsets while asking a question. Ladies and gentlemen, we will wait for a moment while the question queue assembles. The first question is from the line of Sajal Kapoor from Unseen Risk. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for taking my questions and good afternoon, team. Am I audible?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, sir. You're...
Sure. So just a couple of questions. So first one is around our CNS molecules. Researchers here at the University of Liverpool and the King's College London are pointing towards certain long-term impacts induced by COVID-19 related to various CNS disorders. Even the recent data published by IQVIA points towards a number of post-COVID side effects related to Parkinson's, insomnia, Alzheimer's, seizures, depression, anxiety, and so on. I can see that in FY21, many of our CNS molecules have done very well. But given Neuland's long history of CNS filings and domain expertise, how do you assess the emerging problem opportunity landscape, please?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Sajil. Not sure if we are best qualified to answer that question, but I think just from a CMO's perspective, I think as you rightly said, there's a lot of interest in post-COVID medication. There's been a lot of research done in various areas in pulmonology, ARDS, for example, is one area where a lot of companies are looking at discovering new drugs for addressing an issue like ARDS, which I think is a problem that patients who have recovered from COVID face. Again, as a CMO, we work with a lot of biotech companies who are coming up with a lot of innovative drugs. And as part of that effort, we are also fortunate to work with a few biotech companies who are looking at these areas. However, I must say with caution that we still don't know what the outcome of that research is and what the outcome from a business perspective for someone like Neuland would be. But yes, we do, see a lot of activity in this area, and there are a few opportunities that we are working on, and fingers crossed, hopefully something might be, big from that.
Sure, sure. And secondly, we used to read in newspapers and media claims that China is ahead of India in APIs, but the CEP filings across many molecules doesn't support those media hypotheses. So for example, Propofol has no CEP filing from China. And despite the fact that there are very few players globally and the drug stays in short supply, the question is why molecules like Propofol are difficult to make, and why do Propofol kind of molecules don't attract competition despite being in short supply? Thank you.
So a couple of things, Sajal. One, even though China was in the news a lot, it never really established itself for complex or specialty APIs as a credible source to the pharmaceutical market. Where China was able to make some penetration was for high-value antibiotics or semi-synthetic APIs, but that's what they got limited to. Now, coming back to molecules such as Propofol, I think you've partly answered the question that you asked, is that they are complex, they're difficult to make, and require a very high level of compliance to be able to make the product on a consistent basis. And I think I believe Indian manufacturers have established that with a lot more credibility than anybody else.
Sure, Suket. And finally, if I could squeeze in another question regarding our CDMO or CMS pipeline. So yes, there is a significant traction YOY, 42% sales growth is really commendable. When I look at the commercial APIs, we have got 6 in total. I know it's a very confidential business, it's NDAs, and we don't discuss, who we are supplying, what those innovators are. But would it be possible to at least add some color in terms of the therapeutic areas where these 6 APIs are currently targeting? So I'm not interested in your customer names, just the therapeutic areas for these 6 commercial APIs in the CDMO.
No, understand your question, Sajal. I think let us, make a note of it and just think about if there's any way to provide more color. So maybe, if you don't mind, we'll get back to you on that.
Yes, sure, no problem. Sure. I'll rejoin the queue. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we take the next question, a reminder to the participants, in order to ensure that the management is able to address questions from all participants, please limit your questions to 2 per participant. Should you have any follow-up, we would request you to rejoin the queue. The next question is from the line of Sunil Kothari from Unique PMS. Please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for opportunity, sir. Congratulations for annual good set of numbers. Sir, my question is on Unit 3. I think since we being a long-term shareholders, we are awaiting a really good commercial outcome from Unit 3. So if you can give details broadly on how things are shaping up, what type of high-value products are we going to produce and commercialize? Rightly, you mentioned in your this presentation also that by year end we are expecting a good pickup from that unit. A little bit more detail on that unit and the investment which we made in current year? Like our CFO said, 105 crore we invested. So what is the exact in which area, what type of investment we made, and further how we are proceeding on further capex in current year? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question about Unit 3. So Sunil, as we had indicated in our last quarter's earnings, we have just operationalized or commercialized Unit 3, and as of now we have 2 APIs that we have commercialized from that unit. And as we had also indicated in our previous commentary, Unit 3 is the newest manufacturing site, and that is where we intend to create more and more API capacity for the future business. Now, in terms of our intention for Unit 3, as we are scaling up new molecules both on the CMS side as well as the GDS side, we are looking at either creating capacity for them in our existing facilities, which is Unit 1 or Unit 2, or in the case it's not suitable for Unit 1 or Unit 2, we are creating capacity for those products in Unit 3. So in many ways, the way our investments are going on, Unit 1, Unit 2 will only see a minimal increase of capacity for new products. There will be, there will be debottlenecking, there will be modernization related capex. But Unit 3 will be where a large part of the investment will happen, and that's where a lot of volume increase will happen. And that's why we had indicated that by the end of this financial year, FY22, we expect, a reasonable level of commercialization Unit 3. So that's so the way we visualize it is that Unit 3 is where a lot of additional production blocks and new APIs will get scaled up. Unit 1, Unit 2, we will continue to streamline, debottleneck, modernize. And in terms of business divisions, both CMS and GDS molecules will be going into both. And whatever capex indications we had given previously also, that capex also will go into these facilities based on the specific project requirements.
Okay. So, sir, Unit 3 must be contributing very minimal currently, and it can grow substantial part of our revenue over a period?
Yes.
Okay. And, sir, my second question is, it's a very near-term view on quarter numbers. Manufacturing cost has gone up, our employee cost has gone up. I'm not talking about exceptional expenses which we debited, but employee cost, manufacturing cost, both has gone up, and our top line is similar. So just broadly, any of your thought process on cost structure, how it is changing, or it should now stabilize at this level in terms of fixed costs? Some thoughts on that.
So Sunil, I'll just tie it up what Harsh was saying earlier, is that as we ramp up Unit 3 as well, we're also recruiting a lot of employees in Unit 3 so that we are making it ready for commercialization of multiple products. So we will see this where there will be an increase in employee costs as well as manufacturing costs. And then we will start to incur the revenue. So there will be this period of a little bit of a mismatch, but I think as far as we are concerned, it is business as usual. We are not expecting any exceptional increase in overall costs, and this trend should continue.
Great, sir. And my last point is...
Mr. Kothari, sorry to interrupt, but for any follow-up, maybe request you to rejoin the queue, please. Thank you. The next question is from the line of Siri Jain from Apex Capital. Please go ahead.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity. I wanted to understand about the pricing power that you would have in some of the molecules where you dictate the market share. So I wanted to understand, are you able to dictate the prices in such molecules and quickly pass on any rises, or generally you are into long-term supply contracts in such molecules where you have the majority of the market share?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So typically when it comes to the GDS business, we don't have any long-term pricing contracts. It's usually on a year-to-year basis. And even within the GDS business, I think if you have to try to look at it segment-wise, perhaps on the prime side, the prices are more market driven, although Newland, given our track record and our ability to, provide high quality APIs, we tend to have a small premium in terms of what the market prices are. When it comes to the specialty products, there's not as much of a strong pricing reference as it is for prime. So therefore, there tends to be a little bit more variability in terms of pricing. And a lot of this is also dependent on the other aspects, the geographies, what kind of competitors are there, what kind of specifications we are able to provide for the API, etc. Most of our products are in a non-commodity type of category, and therefore we're not too much driven by spot prices and things like that. On the CMS business, our prices are largely governed by long-term pricing contracts which we have. But again, they tend to be reasonable. So if we have exceptionally high costs, if there are unforeseen expenses that need to be passed through, we typically have the leeway with the customer to renegotiate the prices as well. And it also again ties up to the environment that the industry as a whole is facing. So if you look at the situation in the US for the generics 2 or 3 years ago, there was enormous pricing pressure. So perhaps at that time, negotiating for a small price increase or passing through certain costs would have been a little bit more challenging. Perhaps the situation today is a little different. So it's a slightly dynamic environment where GDS prices are a little bit more referenced to competition, and CMS pricing is based on what we have for contracts.
Okay. Thank you. And one last question I have is, how different would be the margins in the specialty API segment and CMS segment, given the challenges that both of these segments have? So I'm not looking for a specific number. I'm just happy to learn about the industry standards. So given the complexity of both the processes, how different would be the margins in both the specialty API and the CMS?
So I think they would largely be comparable, I would say, Sheesh. We've seen, so again, in CMS, we have molecules where we are second source, and there the margins tend to be slightly on the lower side. Some of the newer molecules that we are working on, we are the primary source. The margins tend to be slightly higher. Similarly for specialty as well. In fact, if we have to put them next to each other, I would say the margins are quite comparable, and obviously these are better than the prime molecules.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Jay Shah from Naurang Enterprises. Please go ahead.
Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are.
Hi. Good evening and congratulations to the management on a great set of numbers. I just wanted to ask the management, how is the peptide allocation when it comes to the Unit 3 facility, and is the 105 crores capex and the further planned capex, if the management could throw some light on the allocation towards peptide molecules and some clarity on what are the kind of projects that we are doing that are in the pipeline for the peptide division.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So I think when it comes to peptides, we've indicated in the past, I think most of our peptide molecules are part of our CMS portfolio. And today I think we have almost a dozen or so out of the 78 CMS projects that we have today. These projects are all in various stages of scale up. And whenever we do scale up peptides, actually it does not happen in Unit 3. It actually happens in our Unit 1 because that's where we have our peptide facility. And that's where we intend to further augment peptide manufacturing capacity in the next year or so. So today we have maybe about 2 peptides in CMS which are reasonably close to commercialization, but they are not yet in commercialization. And also we have 2 peptides which we are developing for generics, which is part of the GDS new product portfolio. And as and when these molecules get scaled up, we will scale them up in Unit 1. And coming to answer your question, as the scale of the peptides goes beyond the capacities we have in Unit 1, we will possibly create more capacity for them in Unit 3, but that's not in the immediate future.
Okay. Thank you. And I just wanted to know that last quarter, you had mentioned that, slowly, gradually, we've reduced our dependence on the import of key starting materials from China, and now it is less than 20%. But however, due to the sporadic rise in, the cost of APIs that the whole industry as a whole is facing, can you give me like a short-term or a medium-term outlook on how we will be able to tackle our input cost quarter on quarter, or maybe not even quarter on quarter, or a yearly basis, that since we have been procuring more and more starting materials from domestically or from other partners, is there any light that you can throw on how the cost effectiveness would be achieved?
Ajay, just to clarify, even in the last call, our overall objective for procurement or our supply chain management is to shorten the supply chain and also build multiple options. Our goal was never and is not the foreseeable future to completely stop sourcing from China. All we want to make sure is that we have alternate equally viable options so that we are not completely dependent on a specific geography for our supply chain. Now, notwithstanding that, we're already seeing some cost escalations. Given the situation, we are collaborating with our customers to see how we share the implications of these increased costs. But you can be rest assured that our goal is to deal with the supply chain, and it is not only because of cost.
Okay. Thank you, and all the best for the future endeavors.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Sahil Sharma, an individual investor. Please go ahead.
Hi. Really good to see the CMS pipeline evolve the way it has, especially the fact that development molecules in the development stage have gone up from 12 to 14 now. Any guidance on when we can expect the next commercialization of the CMS molecules time-wise?
So I think we would not be able to really provide any guidance on the commercialization and when it will happen. But I think what we can say, Sahil, is that these are fairly late-stage molecules. We have many of them which are actually in phase 3. Some of them completed phase 3 and actually are commercial. And we are, kind of in the midst of validations, etc. But given the fact that, these are for highly regulated markets and there's that new application process, I think it would be better to look at a slightly medium-term horizon, maybe 2 to 3 years' time for a lot of these molecules to get commercialized. Also keeping in mind that there is a portfolio effect as well, right? Because we may have several molecules, but we are also mindful that not every molecule may be commercially successful. So I think a 2 to 3 year time frame is a good time frame to look at the CMS pipeline that we currently have getting reasonably well commercialized.
Okay, thank you. That's it from my.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Pratik Kothari from Unique PMS. Please go ahead.
Hi, good evening, and thank you for the opportunity, sir. So my first question is a recent disclosure to the exchange regarding downward revision of some land agreement, the area that we were supposed to receive. So if you can just throw some light, we also sold some 120,000 square feet this quarter, which we have mentioned in the disclosure. So some complete picture on what is happening there.
Sure. So the background of this is that Neuland has a piece of land in Hyderabad, which we had determined that we would not build our own facility over there, and we had decided to enter into a joint development agreement with a real estate company. As a result of that partnership, the real estate company actually created a large piece of commercial real estate in which Neuland was entitled to some square footage of the building. And that, as per the agreements that we had with the builder, that square footage was in the form of what is defined in real estate world as a cold shell. Now that cold shell meant that the building would still need to incur certain investments from us to convert it into a warm shell, which would be for work involving false ceiling, ducting, piping, etc., etc. And as part of our agreement, we had to pay or reimburse the builder certain amount for these cold shell to warm shell expenses, which the board felt was better by actually selling a part of the square footage of that building and giving the proceeds of that sale to the builder, so that we would not have to pull funds out of Newland's core business. And that decision had resulted in us having to reduce our square footage from the original building, and by reduction what we did is that reduced amount of square footage was actually sold back to the builder at the current market price. And the consideration that we received for that was what we reimbursed the builder for converting the cold shell into the warm shell. So I think as a result of this process, which was disclosed on the stock exchanges, now whatever remaining square footage is there, about 170,000 square foot or so, is warm shell that is ready to be occupied and is going to be in position for the company for either a long-term lease or any other kind of an. And the expectation of the board and the management is to use the proceeds from such long-term lease or anything for, again, investing into our core operations. So that's the background very broadly. I hope it answers your question.
No, it absolutely does. Thank you for that. And so my second final question is on the capex and R&D side. So if we can, in the presentation itself, you can mention what kind of R&D spend that we do during the year or quarter, what kind of filings that we have done. That is just a suggestion, but if you can, until then, if you can just throw some light on what kind of spend do we do on the R&D side, how many molecules do we file, what kind of areas do we focus on, and also the 100 crores of capex that we have done, clearly we have not increased capacity for that. So what was this regarding?
Deepak, would you like to answer the questions?
Yeah, so R&D spend, so we do there are two kind of expenditures that we incur for R&D. One is the capital expenditure that we use to build the R&D capability. And secondly, the expenses that we incur in terms of operating expenses. So typically in our business, so R&D spends are roughly, for the capex investment, we do allocate roughly around 5 to 7% of our total capex spends for R&D, so that we can upgrade our R&D facilities in terms of new molecules that come into the picture. The operating expenses for the CMS business, so what we do is we recover it from the customer. So we bill it to the customer and recognize that as a revenue for our business. So that is not a charge to the P&L per se. And for our own development for the GDS molecules, that is the inbuilt cost that is basically absorbed in our product costing, and we eventually charge it to the GDS customers. So I can say that overall the R&D capex is roughly in the 5 to 7% range, and the operating expenses are more or less recovered by way of revenue from the customers.
Okay, and on the capex side? Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, on the capex side, sir, 100 crores that you have spent this year?
Capex? Okay.
Yes.
So this year we have roughly invested in capex of around 105 crores, and this has gone majorly. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you. Please proceed.
So this has gone majorly for capacity enhancement as well as for the facility upgradation. So these are the two areas where we have invested in capex roughly around 105 crores in this current year.
So, but our capacity is same, right? Year on year, what it was last year versus this year.
So capacities we are building in Unit 3. So that's where the new business is coming in. So our Unit 1 and Unit 2 is optimally utilized as of now. So the capacity building is happening mostly in the Unit 3.
Okay, so we are further expanding our capacity from
Mr. Kotak?
200. No, it's a continuation. If I can please
Yes. Just to add to what Deepak said, capacity is not the same. In fact, we're enhancing our capacity quarter on quarter. So as he clarified, majority of the capex is gone for capacity expansion for the present as well as future, as well as overall upgradation of the facilities, including R&D. Thanks.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Samir Desai from PH Capital Limited. Please go ahead.
Couple of questions. First is, what is the currently CMO percentage of sales and CDMO percentage of sales, and what makes and what will be the after 3 years of going forward? Any guidance on that? As we know, in CDMO CMO margins are high and CDMO margins are thin. So can you just throw light on that? And second is, what is the total investment done in Unit 3, and what is the still to be spent on that? And then last question about is regarding that your EBITDA margin, and EBITDA margin has been, as you see, quarter to quarter has been reduced. So because of some raw material prices has gone up, or finished good pricing has come down. Can you throw light on this question, please?
Yes, Samir. So I presume when you say CDMO versus CMO, you're referring to GDS versus CMS?
Yes.
Okay. So I think our CMS versus GDS, I think this year the mix is about 65 to 35% in terms of revenues. Going forward, we've not been able to give any kind of a guidance. We haven't, and it's hard for us to estimate because it really depends on how the CMS business scales up and how the GDS molecules do as well. But we expect that it should be, either at current levels or should improve. But it's difficult for us to say, and we've not intentionally given any guidance on that. The question with regards to the variability in the EBITDA margin, I think as CFO Deepak had indicated in his opening remarks, there were these one-time expenses which which had an impact on our margins this quarter. But notwithstanding that, we believe there has been a steady improvement in EBITDA margins, especially if you look at things over an 8 to 10 quarters perspective, you would see a steady improvement in EBITDA margins. And what we have maintained in the past is also that we expect the EBITDA margins to continue to improve. One of the things that we've also seen happening in FY21 throughout the year is that the operating leverage of the business has also increased. So, as we've grown from a 700-odd crore company to a 950 crore-odd company, we've seen better operating leverage and an overall improvement in EBITDA margins. And we expect that trajectory to continue.
Yes. And what about our Unit 3 investments? Can you give some this? Total capex in Unit 3.
So I think as Deepak had earlier indicated, we have capex plans of about 100 crores or so. And as I had indicated, a lot of these investments would be going into Unit 3. Besides going into Unit 3, there would also be some going into Unit 1, Unit 2 for modernization, debottlenecking, etc. And of course for R&D. But for Unit 3 itself, standalone, we don't have the number right away.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Darshan Mehta from DM Stocks. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, sir. Thank you so much for taking my question. One thing is, if you look at quarter-on-quarter basis, the revenues are pretty much flat. I'm not including the other income, which was 15 crores. You had said that raw material sourcing was one of the key reasons which impacted sales. And on the EBITDA front, there were two one-offs that came in. How much of an impact did this cancellation of orders or raw material issue have? So if this was not there, how much probably would the sales have been for this quarter?
So, Saharsh, shall I answer that question?
Yeah.
So there are one-off items as we talked. So if we exclude the one-off items, including the gains that we realized from sale of the property. So our current EBITDA margin would have been in the range of roughly around 17%, so which is as of now 15.4%. So there is a 1.6% increase improvement opportunities in the EBITDA margin, which could have been there if these one-off items is excluded for the time being.
No, you didn't answer about the revenue from operations. You said that raw material sourcing also impacted the sales. So if you can tell me how much lower were the sales because of this raw material sourcing, and secondly, if you can say, because EBITDA margin still is lower from the past few quarters, because we've been clocking margins up to the tune of 19% in the last quarter. So for the next 3-4 quarters, where do you see margins? And if you can just answer on how much lower the revenues were because of order cancellation and raw material issues.
So but I'll clarify the initial part. We did not have any order cancellations in Q4. That did we have any significant impact on the overall sales because of raw material costs? However, as Deepak and Harsh were clarifying earlier, we had certain one-time expenses which came up in Q4, which impacted the overall cost and therefore the margins. But because of raw materials specifically, we did not have any significant impact in Q4.
Right.
And you didn't answer the part where how do you see the next year in terms of margins and revenues?
So I think we've never give guidance, Darshan, in terms of how the business grows. But I think if you look at the trajectory of the past 2 years and you see the steady improvement in the margins, we believe that the momentum continues to be strong because both for the CMS molecules and the GDS molecules, the prospects look fairly good. We probably would not be able to quantify what kind of margins of growth or what kind of target EBITDA margins we're going to have, but we expect that the trajectory will be fairly steady and you should see consistent performance from us going into FY22 as well.
And as a general comment to our investors and shareholders, I think what Harsh said is absolutely right. I think we expect the business to continue. We haven't seen any indications from our customers in terms of their expected offtake, but at the same time, we all know that the current situation with COVID has brought in a lot of uncertainty and nobody knows how the situation is going to pan out. So we're keeping a close watch. We are managing it on a day-to-day basis, but only time will tell as to how the current situation will impact us.
Okay, thank you. If I have more questions, I'll join.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Yogesh Bhatia from Sequent Investments. Please go ahead.
Hi. Actually, I had questions on the EBITDA margin, but they've been just answered previously. I would actually want to know that what is the capex for Unit 3? Unit 3, 100 crore has been done, but what is the total capex done until now for Unit 3? That's all.
Deepak, you would like to answer?
Yeah. So if I talk right from the beginning, like we acquired this Unit 3, this is a brownfield plant. So there was an initial acquisition cost. After that, we spent some capex for building the facilities. So roughly till date, I can say that we have invested overall in this Unit 3 roughly in the range of 200-220 crores of capex investment.
Sure. Okay. And sir, one follow-up question. Our usual asset turnover is 2.5 times. Should we expect something similar from Unit 3 over the period of next 1-2 years till we reach optimal utilization?
Harsh, you want to answer that?
Sorry.
No, Deepak, please go ahead.
Okay. So see, Unit 3 is ramping up. So we started commercial production in Unit 3. We are also looking to export from Unit 3 to Europe as well as to US, subject to approval from the US authorities. So currently, Unit 3 is in the development stage. We won't be able to comment whether initially we'll be able to get 2.4, 2.5 tons from Unit 3, but gradually it will pick up.
All right. Okay. That should be over a period of next 2 years?
Maybe 2-3 years down the line, yes.
Okay. That should be all, sir. Thanks.
Right.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Jatin K from Alpha Capital. Please go ahead.
Hello, sir. Thanks for taking my question. So my first question would be on the pricing side of the API. Are we seeing any price jumps or things like that in the Q4 as well as in the current quarter?
Nothing in a short-term basis. Prices have been reasonably steady, and we negotiate price on an annual basis. Also get but at this point, expect to hold steady.
Sir, you have in the presentation you have talked about this raw material sourcing issues. Since this and you are saying that it has not affected the Q4. So is it affecting right now, or do we expect it to affect in the coming months, or because you have mentioned in the PPT, but you are saying it hasn't affected much in Q4 numbers?
So where it has affected us, inward logistics, outward logistics, delays in production planning, those are the impacts that we've had on it. I think as a result, we've had to reorient our operations, our production planning, etc., to try to cope up with the situation. The impact materially on Q4 was minimal, and that's what Suchet had clarified. On Q1 also, we are, hoping, and we're still not at the end of Q1, but we are hoping that our planning will mitigate any of the uncertainties that we are facing with regards to these raw material issues. But I think just to be very transparent, we wanted to let investors know that, logistics on raw materials and outward logistics are, a constant source of tension for us in managing our operations.
Yeah.
Sure, sir.
Changing on it's hard to any predictability, especially when the situation is so uncertain. But as Harsh said, we're doing everything we can to ensure that there is continuity, including, replanning constantly to make sure that, we're dealing with the situation.
Sure, sir. And sir, last would be on the CMS side, while molecules have been pretty much stable Q on Q, revenues have gone down. So is there some deferment out there in CMS side?
In particular, Jatin, I think when you look at the CMS business, I would not look at it on a quarter-to-quarter basis because, there would be certain products for which we would not have orders in some quarters, and therefore there could be certain volatility. I think if you look at Q4 in particular, our commercial orders were low, and that's because we didn't have orders in that quarter. We perhaps, delivered them in Q3, or we will deliver them in the upcoming quarters. But I think in terms of our development revenues, I think we had a fairly good quarter. So I think on CMS, I would look at things on an annualized basis, and they look very promising. I think what you have seen in Q4 is not necessarily, a predictor for what's going to happen. I think when you look at the overall last 3 to 4 quarters, I think that's a good reflection of what they're in.
So current growth rates, do we expect to continue in coming years?
Yes, I think the 20 crores in 2020 grew to 280 odd crores in 2021. And we expect that growth has happened because not just the commercial products have done well, but we've been also able to add new projects. And as I was mentioning in the earlier comments, as new molecules get scaled up and commercialized, we expect this growth to go further. How much it will grow, what kind of guidance is something that we are stopping short of giving.
Thank you. The next question is from the line of Hasmukh Gala from Finvest Advisors. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I have two simple questions. As you said, sir, can you hear me? Hello?
We can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you. Please proceed.
Yeah, okay, fine. So now, typically, you did explain very well that one should not look at what has happened in Q4 because of one-time expenses, etc., but look at an annual basis. So would it be fair to see the cost structure as it stands in Q4 as a basis for us to make our financial modeling into what is likely to happen? Like you said that, 17% margin, we have about 16.7 without considering any other income. And also, removing that 9.55 crore, which you have included in the other expenses. So eliminating that, I think the margin is 16.17. So can we measure any increase that will happen in future because of better product mix and things like that on that 17% range?
So I'll give a brief response and maybe I'll request Deepak to add his perspective as well. So I think in terms of modeling, obviously I would not be able to comment, but yes, Q4 is perhaps not the best quarter to model expenses because of these one-time expenses. I think going forward, we expect two things to happen. We expect the business mix, which has already improved significantly over the last 3 years, to continue improving, and that should, result in better margins. How much, what is something depends on the success we achieve with the individual molecules. I think at a cost level, as Suchet and I had indicated that, we expect to capitalize Unit 3 further. We expect to add more manpower. We expect to invest more in R&D, and we expect to keep investing. So there would be certain expenses that we expect to incur going forward as well. I think it requires to understand at a level to be able to, model it. So I would say on the big picture, the 3 manufacturing sites and the R&D facility that we have, I think together, 2 years ago we had revenues of over 700 crores. Actually less than that. 1 year ago we did 700 crores. This year we did about 950. We expect operating leverage to play a role in the business going forward as well. And that should also, along with the better business mix, help us, have good margins. The quantification of it is something that we leave to you. I will still ask Deepak to add his comments and see if there's anything else that he can provide as inputs.
Yeah. I think Sash, you gave a very good perspective. I will also try and mention that currently we should look at the full year performance. And the full year is actually not a true reflection of what is going to happen in future, because future is also dependent on how Unit 3 revenues will be generated, what will be the kind of product mix and all. So it's very difficult to say as of now that whether this is the true reflection of the picture, EBITDA margins as of now for the full year basis. But I see that once the Unit 3 becomes ramped up, then probably we can have a better visibility about the future margins. But as of now, it is too early to say, since Unit 3 is still under ramping up process. So maybe we'll have to wait for a couple of quarters to see how these pictures turn out to be.
CapEx requirement will be around 100 crore per annum, or will it grow?
You said CapEx requirement?
Yeah, annual CapEx requirement.
So we are projecting similar kind of CapEx investment for the next year. That is also dependent on the projects which will come up. We will be evaluating those projects, and after that evaluation only we will see whether we are getting good ROIs on those projects. Accordingly, we'll take a call. So currently we are projecting in that current year, based on the current year CapEx investments, similar kind of investments going forward, subject to the evaluation on the basis.
Okay. And the last question, what will be the effective tax rate we should consider?
Sorry, I didn't get the question.
Yeah, effective tax rate.
Effective?
Tax rate, income tax rate.
Okay. So we have basically opted for a 25% interest rate. So I don't see any changes which is going to happen in the tax rate, but however it is subject to the next year's budget. What the
That's fine. That's fine. So as of now, you have opted for 25%.
Yes, we have opted for 25%. Correct.
Okay. Thank you very much. Wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we take the last question from the line of Keval Asher, an individual investor. Please go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity. Wanted to have some idea on our CMS segment. As over the past few years, we've scaled up, and at present it is 28% of our total revenues. Now we are also focusing on late-stage molecules, as it is our strategy now onwards. So how much percentage of total revenue do we expect?
Clearly, could you repeat the question?
Yeah. Am I audible now?
Yes. If you could just speak a little slowly.
Sure. So basically, over the past few years, we have successfully scaled up our CMS segment, and at present it is 28% of our total revenues. Now, as our strategy is to focus on late-stage molecules from the clients as well, how much percentage of total revenues do we expect from CMS segment over the medium to long term, as we cannot say it on quarterly basis?
So thanks for the question, Keval. I think the CMS business has been steadily increasing as a percentage of overall business. Going forward, I think how much of the total business it would be is really determined on what kind of scale-ups will happen in the CMS new molecules business. As we know that the baseline business is steady and predictable, it's probably growing at 8-10% per year. What makes it difficult to model for us is the new molecules which we have in the CMS pipeline. We don't know how many of them are going to be successful and to what extent. And somewhere that determines the proportion of the CMS business in the context of the overall business. At the same time, we also have a lot of volume increase in our GDS molecules as well. So somewhere it's a very dynamic situation where we have a bunch of CMS molecules scaling up and getting commercialized, which we are not able to predict. Second, we also have a lot of GDS molecules which are doing well as well. And in this kind of an environment, we do have our internal estimates, etc., but we are not in a position to give any sort of a guidance on what will be the proportion going forward. I think the current ratio of the business, which is approximately 30%, is a good base to look at. And I think going forward, since the CMS business is a smaller business and is growing at a higher rate, we can expect it to have a higher contribution. But to what extent and how much time is something that we would not be able to provide any inputs for.
Sure. Thank you so much, and all the best for the future.
Thank you. I would now like to hand the conference over to Mr. Saharsh Davuluri for closing comments. Over to you, sir.
Once again, thanks everyone. This is Suchet here for all your questions and interest in Neuland. I think your questions about Unit 3, the overall CapEx, margins, what the expectations are, why there was a fluctuation, the current situation with COVID, the supply situation from China as well as raw materials. I think very pertinent questions. I think as much as we enjoy answering them, it also ensures that we think about all these issues in reflection to your questions. So thanks for your interest in Neuland. Thanks again for your questions. If you have further questions, please feel free to write to either Sajeev or Divakar, and we'll be more than happy to schedule time so that we can get all your questions answered. Once again, thanks for being here, and we will see you next time.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Neuland Laboratories Limited, that concludes this conference. We thank you all for joining us, and you may now disconnect your lines.